Guys, welcome, welcome, welcome. I see a lot of people jumping in, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. There's not a lot to go through, but welcome. We're so excited for you guys to join us for this year's virtual Cane Crawl 2020-21. Looks a little bit different than normal, but we have a really cool, Cane Crawl set up for everybody. So I'm excited. For those who don't know me, my name is Abby Reynolds. I graduated from the University of Tulsa in 2014. Have been involved with the alumni board, wow, probably for the past 6 years. So I'm excited to be on here and honored to be helping host and bring this to fruition. So obviously, COVID-19 has changed a lot of things. It's been 2 years since we hosted this event. So thank you so much for your patience and your loyalty and hanging with us through this strange year. As always with the Cane Crawl, the reason why we do this, proceeds go to the TU Alumni Association Scholarship Fund to help people like you and I back when we were in college find success at TU and be able to get an awesome education. I am going to share my screen. Just wanted to thank our wonderful sponsors as we had a lot of people involved. 2 seconds here. I wanted to thank our platinum sponsors, Jim and Judy Miller and Friends, as well as the Law Office of Bryce A. Hill. Our Goldie sponsors, the Kuykendalls, Andrea and Thad Satterfield, Western Sun Credit, Federal Credit Union, the Wright family. Our Hurricane sponsors, Amy Freeberger, hi Amy, Craig and Ginny Minto, and Calvin Michael Moniz, hi Calvin, as well as our Hut sponsors, Seth and Katie Ahrens, hi guys, Andrew Bussman, hello, and Stephanie and Michael Madsen, hi to you guys as well. Let's see, thank you guys for purchasing a Cane Crawl pack as well. We have the wonderful Marshall team here kind of guiding us through all this. So I hope that you guys enjoy the 3 beers they hand selected for you guys. Have to say it, remember to drink responsibly and let's get things going. And if you guys do have questions, please post them in the chat. This will, we will see this, the Marshall team will answer it and help engage us kind of in some awesome dialogue. And really quickly, so this video, this Zoom, this meeting, whatever you want to call it, is going to be posted to TU's YouTube page. So I don't believe your videos are going to show up on that front as well. But let's get things going. And again, if you have questions for the Marshall team, post them in the chat. So we can kind of monitor that and ask that and get answers to all that. So it is my pleasure to introduce Eric Marshall as well as Wes Alexander. They are members of the TU Alumni Association and the team behind Marshall Brewing. So thank you guys so much for being with us and hosting us. And I'm excited to learn more about what you guys do and hear how you make the awesome beers that we get to drink tonight.
Well, good. Yeah, thanks for having us. Obviously, being TU alum, excited, and when we got asked to do this, and obviously things look a little different. The last year's been a little bit weird, even as the world is kind of starting to get a little more comfortable. People are getting shots and getting back in the world. Of course, now I don't know if it just got loud. I'm sitting here, and the air compressor decides it wants to fire up right as we start talking. So hopefully, it's not too loud right now. But yeah, no, we're excited. We're happy. We're excited to kind of just visit with you guys and virtually drink a beer. Thanks to you guys who picked up the Cane Crawl pack. Hopefully, you're enjoying the beers. We tried to do a little bit of variety of some different stuff, some beers that have some fun stories behind them. Obviously, if you're drinking something else or you're in a different part of the country, tried to help suggest a few beers from some of the places that we've got a lot of friends in the industry, and some of the things that maybe we don't get in this part of the states, or obviously our beers don't make it up to Denver, DC, or some of those areas. But tried to suggest a few beers that kind of fall in line, or just other beers that are really good. So hopefully, some of those suggestions led you well, and we'll introduce you to some new fun breweries if you haven't tried those out. So real quick, I'm Eric Marshall, founder brewmaster at Marshall Brewing. I graduated from TU in 2004 with a degree in international business and German language. And so with me today on the call is Wes Alexander. He's our director of sales and marketing. Wes was at TU a little bit before me with my older brother. But I'll kind of let Wes introduce himself and maybe give a little background, and hopefully this air compressor will kick off and it's not so loud.
Yeah, well, thanks, Eric. Fun to be with you all today, and go to you. Excited to join in, talk about beer today. You know, I've known the Marshall family kind of my entire life. People always ask, well, how in the world is it that you get into the beer business? And the short answer is you glom onto it. And as Eric mentioned, I grew up with his older brother. I've known Eric nearly his entire life. And so, you know, if you thought back to 2007, 2008, the family is getting Marshall Brewing Company up and going. I'll let Eric talk about, you know, the specifics of opening the business. But I started driving my car over to what is now the production facility at 618 South Wheeling, getting out of my car and sticking my head in. I did that quite frequently. And before I got comfortable enough to say, you know, well, who's going to sell beer for you guys? And we came to a real quick kind of arrangement. I did it for, oh gosh, Eric, 18 months, 2 years, something like that, just kind of for fun in the evenings. And I'm here to tell you, people ask me what is your job? My job is to sell beer, but my job really is the most fun job that there is. Do I drink beer all day long? No, you can't do that on your job either. But still, visiting with people about beer is tremendous fun. I'll tell just a quick story because I'm a refugee from selling things that are less important than beer, namely industrial chemicals. But in my previous life in sales, the hardest thing to do is always to get a meeting, right? And so when you cross over to the world of beer and you're looking to get a meeting for sales, pretty easy about 3:30, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock to have some folks say, yeah, we'd love to come over to the brewery for a meeting. Of course you would. So anyway, glad to be here with you all today. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Wes. So real quick, and not to jump in and steal your thunder, Abby, I didn't know if you were coming with a question, but I figure if you haven't done already, I haven't cracked a beer yet, but it's probably time to crack a beer. So we'll
5 o'clock somewhere.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Cheers.
5 o'clock in Colorado. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe Adrian Tuck in Colorado. I'm sure you're drinking beer. It's 5 o'clock, right? I don't know. I'm assuming she's probably on this. Anyways, so I figure we can just, you know, drink at your leisure. We'll talk a little bit. Wes can talk about one of the beers in our pack, and then I think, you know, we'll take a break and do a refill break or whatever. But first off, let's just go ahead and say cheers, and thank you guys for joining us. We're so happy to be here. Anytime I get the chance to be involved with some TU stuff, I jump at the opportunity. So we were super happy to be asked to do this, and cheers.
Cheers.
So in your sample pack, you've got Sundown Wheat. And Sundown Wheat is a beer I'd describe as a heritage beer. It was one of the first beers that we brewed at Marshall Brewing Company back in 2008. And if you were to think about yourself, perhaps if you're old enough to have been drinking beer in 2008, you know, how did you identify with craft beer, and especially in Oklahoma, in our region? And you know, those of us that were savvy were traveling around and looking at breweries, trying different beers. A lot of folks, Eric, you mentioned Colorado. You know, I think a lot of folks got introduced from Oklahoma to travels to Colorado to beer. And if you thought about beer in Colorado in the late 1990s, early 2000s, you know, pretty synonymous with Fat Tire out of our friends at New Belgium Brewing Company. But really, the number one brand that it kind of swept the Midwest was Boulevard Wheat. And they'd done such a fine job of introducing people to craft beer. And, you know, I think folks would tell you, if you go back to that earlier days that the trend of craft beer had not caught on. You know, folks like to describe that trends start on the coast and then work their way to the middle. And so I think for us, one of the things that we were looking at was, well, gosh, Boulevard makes a really delicious beer, and in Belgium, they make a really delicious beer. We'd like to have something that had a little bit of an inspiration, but that was really something that was a crowd pleaser, a beer that you could take someone who had had a Bud Miller Coors Light, put them in this beer and it not be off-putting. And so really the concept comes around for Sundown Wheat. And Sundown Wheat in style, if you've got that in your pack and you cracked it open and you're smelling it, you know, I really like to say that our approach and my approach to talking about craft beer is not to be snobbish. And so though I'm drinking out of a can, you can drink out of a glass, you do however you want. But everything that was done, as Eric will describe in the brewing process perhaps later, everything that was done was based on this idea that we're trying to craft an artisanal product that is beautiful to look at. So if you've got it in a glass, I think that's one of the first things that you'd go about doing. And any folks, if you've been on a tour of Marshall Brewing Company, if you've been perhaps on one of my tours, one of my favorite takeaways to offer is, you know, if you're drinking beer out of a glass, you can see the color on it. How in the world is it that there are different colors in beer? And there's a real simple answer to that. There's really 4 ingredients to beer. It's malted barley, it's water, it's hops, and it's yeast. Well, the malted barley is a widget, and you can think about that as being something that, like a coffee bean, gets roasted. That's part of the drying malting process. It's too technical to discuss all of that, but it's worth noting that if there's very little drying to the grain, there's very little color. Go on up the spectrum like you would the coffee bean to, say, the espresso roast, you pick up a ton of color. And so that's one of the first things and the first clues we get when we pour beer into a glass, is we get a good idea of what it looks like. So Sundown Wheat is a light in color, kind of a straw colored beer. And that's going to give us an indication that we've got malt that's not heavily roasted. The second thing, if you've got that beer in the glass or even in the can, you're not on video here, so you don't have to try and stick your nose into it.
I'm on video and I want to smell it.
This is how it looks, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, perfect, Abby. Yeah. What did you smell?
I smell deliciousness. I don't feel like I have a good olfactory system here, but I smell good things.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's wonderful. So Sundown Wheat is a wheat style beer with we describe a Belgian inspiration. And there are 2 things in there that come from the ancient style of beer from Belgium known as a wit beer. Wit beers are wheat beers brewed with orange peel and coriander. And Eric created this recipe with a really light touch of adding orange peel and coriander. And though wheat, which is one of the malted grains that's added to this beer to make it what we know as a wheat beer, always produces a lighter flavor and a lighter color in beer, it can produce a strong flavor on the palate. And the addition of coriander and orange peel really serve to kind of offset the strength of the character of the wheat, if you will. So what you should have is just a light, real light on the nose spiciness. And that's the coriander, and then maybe a little bit of that citrus from the orange peel. Other than that, this beer is 4.7% ABV. It's a beer that right out of the gate for Marshall Brewing Company was our best-selling beer. Probably took about a year and a half before that beer was eclipsed in sales by another heritage brand, Atlas IPA. And that kind of makes sense if you think about the whole arc of craft beer, that everybody starts with something that's easy on the palate, that's really acceptable to a wide crowd, and then push on for hops or dark beer or different categories. So that's Sundown Wheat. really on the label, you'll notice that there is a tree, and that's kind of an ode to, you know, our favorite city in the United States of America, Tulsa, and the council oak. So
very cool.
That's our Sundown Wheat. It's still to this day performs very, very well. We moved. I think it's interesting to talk about the packaging of this beers. Folks that have followed us from the beginning know that we released beers in 2008 early, just in kegs. And as we progressed, we knew that to sell more and more product, we needed to get into a package. And so we're a bootstrapped family brewery. The first thing that we could afford to package on was a 22-ounce line. And I wish I had a bottle to show you, but if you just imagined a brown bottle but bigger, we hand dipped them in wax and sold them as an individual selling unit, 22 ounces, which is a pretty nice serving size. We soon moved out of that packaging into what we know as one of the most ubiquitous packaging delivery devices for beer, the 6-pack 12-ounce brown bottles. And we ran those right up until last year when we put beer in just a good old fashioned 12-ounce can. And I should not have used that terminology, because when I was at TU, the beer that we got after we were 21, and we drank out of a can, right?
Responsibly, that is.
Yes,
yeah.
Responsibly, yeah. That beer was typically terribly affordable and in an awful aluminum can. Today's aluminum cans are lined with a phenolic lining. There's essentially a plastic lining so that the beer doesn't come into contact with that aluminum or aluminium, however you want to say that. And as a result, especially if you're pouring your beer into a glass, you skip all that terrible tin, aluminum, you know, rotten penny flavor that you used to get on that rot gut, really cheap $10 for a case beer. So I always tell folks that, you know, it was a step up for us to go from the brown bottle into the can. It's a better package. It blocks all UV light. It protects the beer like a keg does. And if you pour it into a glass, you get as good a flavor as you would expect the beer right on tap at the brewery.
So Eric, I've got to ask, and Wes, you mentioned this, that Eric created the recipe. How do you know what's good? Because I feel like my first attempt at a beer would literally be like drinking storm water, you know? So how do you understand the flavors and the concepts of, you know, what's going to make something delicious and crushable, and, you know, you want to have more of it?
Yeah. So I started home brewing like early college with my older brother. And so, you know, there's a lot of trial and error. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't taste that great. You know, I always tell people that are getting into home brewing, it's like, you know, just as long as you're kind of like clean and sanitary, like even if you don't like it, you're going to be somebody's best friend because you're giving them free beer, right?
Yeah,
even if you don't like it. So there's a fair amount of that. But, you know, just as you go, you know, I have a background of studying and apprenticing over in Germany. I worked at a brewery in Pennsylvania called Victory for a little while. And so, you know, you just, over the year, you get experience, you start to understand how the different ingredients play well together and so on. And then, you know, at least with that beer, you know, we start, as I started trying to develop and determine what products we wanted to start off with, you start to look at kind of what the market will bear. And kind of like what Wes said earlier, you know, things tend to start on the coast and work their way to Oklahoma. And it was certainly that way with craft beer. And so, you know, when we started, I think a couple years before, McNelly's had opened, and that was the first really like 60 tap, you know, 200 bottles and cans type of place. So really, you know, the exposure of craft beer, but really for the longest time, it was your macro breweries, your Bud, Miller, Coors, but also we'll give a lot of credit to Boulevard up in Kansas City, because Boulevard Wheat really was kind of the first, you know, craft beer that you really saw a lot of, because it was always, you'd see the macro breweries and then you would see Boulevard Wheat on tap, because it was a beer that was, you know, different enough, but also flavor wise wasn't just a completely off-putting or turn you away if you're used to drinking, you know, those mass produced beers. And so, you know, so when I started to look at like Sundown Wheat, it was kind of what the market would bear and where could this fit in to just not be another wheat beer. And so, you know, so it's kind of a hybrid, and I'm glad you asked this question because I was going to add on to what Wes said, but it's kind of a hybrid of two styles. So your classic Belgian wit beer, or Belgian wheat, that's spiced with orange peel and coriander, and then your classic American wheat, like a Boulevard. So this kind of falls in the middle of the road. So, I mean, we're using an American yeast strain, so it's kind of neutral in that regard, but it's spiced with orange peel and coriander. So it kind of gives that little citrusy sweetness and then that little bit of, you know, spiciness. So that's kind of what we were going after, kind of an entry level, or not entry level, a mass appeal, sort of transitional beer. So, you know, if somebody's drinking, if somebody, you know, was a loyal Bud Miller Coors drinker, but hey, I want to try this beer from Tulsa that's made here locally. You know, what's something you can try that's not going to just be a double IPA that'll, you know, just completely turn you off, right? And so
yeah, I get that.
And then kind of let the evolution happen. And so really this is kind of a hybrid of two styles. And so as I was you know, going through, I told Leslie, I was like, hey, can I, you know, maybe make a suggestion of some beers to people that maybe are on this but aren't in Tulsa, that can't get our beer. And so you know, as she kind of sent me the list of some of the places, I started looking, and it's like, okay, you know, Colorado, New Belgium obviously is a brewery that's available, I think, nationwide. And so that was one that I put in with Sunshine Wheat. And I don't want that to sound like, hey, Sundown Wheat, Sunshine Wheat. I'd actually never had a Sunshine Wheat before I realized, oh man, that name's really close to it, and so it's not like a ripoff. You know, that's odd. But so, you know, that's a kind of beer, that's a beer that kind of follows more in there, but it also maybe leans a little more towards the Belgian wit style. For our friends in Kansas City, I put Cinderblock Brewing has a weathered wit, and really I wanted to highlight them because one of the guys involved, I'm not 100% sure he's still involved, but at least early on in the startup, was another TU alum, fraternity brother, John Bakey, was involved in kind of the startup of that. And so I wanted to make sure and get one of their beers on here. So I tried to suggest a few different things for those people that couldn't get in here. But to answer your question, trial and error. Now we have like a smaller system that we can kind of play around with and do some different things there. But then other times you get confident knowing how things work together, and you just kind of roll the dice and hope it doesn't turn out bad.
So have you ever had a perfect brew on the first shot, or does it usually take a couple to tweak it out?
So perfect, I guess, would be a relative term. You know, there's always something that can be a little bit better. I do like to say that, you know, like I said, there's some times where it's just like, okay, you know, we didn't test brew this, we just kind of went for it. And the one that I always highlight there is our first seasonal was our Oktoberfest lager, and it's still probably our most popular seasonal. And that was one of those that was like, oh man, we need to brew this beer. And we really needed to brew it like a month ago or like 2 weeks ago. And so there was no time to sort of test. And the unfortunate, you know, there's another kind of war story, but the unfortunate side, early on when we started, we actually had to price post with the state beers that we were going to offer, that we were going to make available for sale. And you had to do that 45 days in advance, and you could only do it once a month. So if you missed that date, you know, there was a 2-month period before the beer would be available. And so we actually had a mistake and didn't get that beer posted. So our first Oktoberfest wasn't even available until November of that year, which was very unfortunate. But to answer your question, that was a beer that, you know, we just kind of rolled the dice and went with, because we needed to brew it and we didn't have time to test brew it. And that recipe's never changed. And again, it's still one of our most popular seasonal beers. So that's one that kind of, again, I don't want to say perfect, because I always feel like there's some stuff to tweak and do different, but it's one that we didn't have to change on the upfront, which is really
there's
nice.
just one more special thing I think about that beer. Where was the first time it was served?
At my wedding. So so it was the wedding. In fact, Wes can tell, we've got a customer that has a place out in Collinsville, out in Collinsville. And she still to this day refers to it as the love beer. So she's like, She calls it the love beer, which is pretty funny. So,
well, that could be a mid-season rebrand, so you guys could sell it year round. Because I love.
You know what's a funny
So-
story is that the sales and marketing guy thought that good beer is good beer, right? And
Amen.
let's take this Oktoberfest and call it Novemberfest and see what happens.
Yeah.
Crash and burn. So we did actually rebrand it and offer it in the spring under its traditional name, which is Merits. So
Very cool.
awesome.
It was funny. Yeah, the funny thing about Oktoberfest is that once the festival's over here in Tulsa, people automatically start thinking that beer is old, even if it's super fresh. And so it's just kind of a weird season how that all works out. And if you put it out too early, it's still hot here and people are like, what are you doing? And so it's trying to find that right balance, because Sam Adams will start putting their Oktoberfest out, it seems like, earlier and earlier every year.
Yeah,
so
it's
it feel like it'll be
Starbucks
out.
with their-
It'll feel like it'll be out in 2 weeks now. Yeah, with all their.
Yeah, it's
They're-
the same with Starbucks and their pumpkin spice lattes. They always drop those like the last weekend of August, and you're like, it's still 110 degrees here.
Right. Yeah. So, but yeah, I know there was one of the things on here, just kind of telling a little of the backstory of the brewery. That's one problem. We were talking about all this and trying to go through, and I was just like, look, you're gonna have more of a problem with me and Wes talking too much than trying to stay on time. So Abby, I'm gonna leave it up to you to like cut me off here and there, but I'll give a quick little background, the history of my background, and then the history of the brewery, and everything like that, and then we can kind of jump from there if you're good with that. So like I said, I graduated from, so I'm a product of Tulsa, graduated from Edison High School back in 2000, and then went to the University of Tulsa and graduated in 2004 with a degree in international business and German. And while as part of that program, I went and studied abroad. TU has a sister exchange with the University of Siegen in Germany. And I went abroad my junior year, kind of junior spring semester, and then summer. I literally came back, and 2 days later, class started the next fall. So it was a little bit
Perfectly timed.
a little bit of an adjustment, but it was a great opportunity to for me to go over to learn the language, to have the experience to travel a little bit. I lived with a family that didn't speak English, so that really got the German skills going. But I'm still super close with that family. They're in their mid to upper 80s now. I still talk to them probably once a month. My German dad is named Klaus, which is now my son's middle name. So we've got some just super important part of my life, but also wouldn't have had that opportunity had it not been for TU and the study abroad programs they have, which I love seeing now. There's more and more emphasis on study abroad for college students coming in, and a lot of places are requiring it. I don't think requiring is not the right word, but highly encouraging it, which I think is great, because it really does open your eyes to different things. And had it not been for that program and the family that I lived with lived real close to a big brewery there in Germany. And, part of our program was that we had to get out and experience the culture, experience the city, get around. And so I was like, well, hey, I'm a college kid. I want to go tour a brewery. And I had the opportunity to go check out a brewery, and just really fell in love with how brewing is such a big part of the German culture. And obviously, drinking fresh local beer, it was just fantastic. And so I always like to tell the story as what I mean by brewing culture and how it's related to the culture. And obviously in Oklahoma for the longest time, things were highly I guess frowned upon when it came to alcohol. I keep joking with people. I'm going to jump all over the place here, but we've been in business for almost 13 years. And for the first 10, 11 years, we were vilified for making beer in Oklahoma. And I can't tell you how many times I've gotten emails of like, do you know what you're doing is ruining people's lives and stuff? You know, it's crazy how that works. But then, you know, when it comes vaccine time, we were in like phase 1 of essential, and we're able to get the vaccine early. So it's like we were vilified for 10 years and now we're super essential. So funny how times change.
Yeah.
But you know, the cultural aspect of it was, you know, from the time kids are walking and playing sports and all that, the local brewery sponsors everything. They're so interwoven in the community. And so it's not rare to see a group of kids in a kindergarten class walking, you know, doing whatever, and all of them have t-shirts and hats and backpacks from the local brewery. Whereas here, I remember in 7th grade, I went on a ski trip to Keystone, Colorado, and I got a t-shirt that looked like a Heineken beer label. And I was in 7th grade. I didn't know what a Heineken was. I just thought it was a cool t-shirt.
Yeah.
So I proudly wore that shirt to school the next Monday. And I was told immediately that if I didn't flip my shirt inside out, I'd be sent home from school and suspended for promoting alcohol, even though it didn't say anything about alcohol.
Yeah, it was just Keystone.
Right. And so that's how just vastly different things are, and how it's such a big part of the community. And that's what I think the craft beer industry has brought to the U.S. It's so, you know, when we started back in 2008, there were about 1,400 craft breweries, or 1,400 breweries, period, in the U.S.
Wow.
Now there's almost 10,000. And so we've seen an unreal growth in the number of breweries, and most of them being, you know, highly local or hyper local to you. And so what the industry and what these breweries have brought again to the community, and how they're such a big player, is you're really starting to see kind of what I'm talking about in that regard. And so that was just very fascinating to me. And obviously when I got back to Oklahoma and really didn't have the opportunity to drink good, fresh local beer anymore, I kind of saw a need and an opportunity, got really serious into home brewing, and then started to look at what it would take to get into brewing as a career. Happened to mention to a family friend who said, oh, well, our son's best friend is a German brewmaster who lives in Munich. We'll have to get you guys in contact. And so stars kind of aligned. And after I graduated from TU, started putting all this together, and then went and studied an apprentice brewing over in Germany. And I apprenticed at 6 different breweries all over the country, and then with an equipment manufacturer who would buy and sell breweries, and we were tearing down breweries and shipping them off to Russia and so on. And he was actually the guy that, once I got started, helped me locate all our equipment and helped do the install, and was kind of a mentor in that regard. So just a great opportunity to travel, to you know, decided that if we were going to do this, you know, I was going to take the opportunity to go learn from a culture that has, you know, very well known for brewing and beer making and all of that. So it was a cool opportunity. And then I came back stateside and went to work for Victory Brewing in Downingtown, Pennsylvania. So some of you all that get Victory in your neck of the woods, you may have seen a couple of Victory beers pop up on your suggested beers that I highlighted for this. And so great brewery, great opportunity. But then spent a little over a year there before deciding that it was time to move back to Tulsa. And my good friend Elliot Nelson, who's head of the McNelly's group, was kind of an essential part of just saying, hey man, timing is right. You need to get back to Tulsa. We need to get this going. We need a beer. And while it was probably the absolute worst time ever to start a brewery, just in terms of, you know, raw materials, in terms of the market, just everything was awful at that time. But it was the perfect time to start in Oklahoma, as, like I said, as things were working their way, craft beer was working their way here. We kind of got to be on the forefront of, you know, educating the consumer on craft beer, educating people what it's like to have a local brewery, being, you know, trying to be as involved in the community and everything that we can be. And a big part of that too then took on the role of, you know, trying to change the laws and trying to make things a little bit more modern around here, because when we first started, we technically couldn't even sample our own beer out of the tanks to make sure that it tasted right to then go out the door. So we had to change the laws there, and that was a huge bit of importance to us, because again, we wanted to be on the forefront of the education side and educating people what craft beer is and how important freshness is and so on. And so after about a 3-year fight, we were able to get the laws changed to where we could offer someone up to 12 ounces of samples per person per day. We had tried for about a year or so before that to get 16 ounces of samples per person per day, but that was way too much. And so it was a crazy fight. But then that snowball led to then just a massive overhaul of the liquor laws. And now we are where we are. And we went from some of the worst laws in the United States to some of the best. And we were joking the other day, I'm on the board for the Oklahoma Restaurant Association. And we were joking the other day because we're like this close to having a bill passed in the Oklahoma legislature that will allow for to-go drinks, kind of like daiquiri shops down in
I'm ready for that.
down in New Orleans. But it's just like, the big thing around there was like, would you have ever thought that would be possible? And
No.
And now here we are. And so it's really been crazy to see that happen. But through that, it's really just grown the craft beer culture here in Tulsa and in Oklahoma in general. And so we went from just a couple of breweries to now I think there's probably upwards of 30 breweries in the state now operating or in planning. And so it's a great time to be a beer drinker. There's some amazing beers being made here in Oklahoma, and so it's just really cool. I mean, I get to sit back. We got awarded a couple of years ago from the State Department of Labor. We got an award basically for creating an industry here in Oklahoma. And when you start to, at the end of the day, I mean, it's small business. There's challenges. There's stuff that's no fun at all. But at the end of the day, when you get to sit back and look, kind of like Wes said, beer is a lot of fun to sell, but at the end of the day, you're making beer, and that's a lot cooler than a lot of other things, right? So that kind of eases some of the frustrations and some of the stress at the end of the day. But when we can sit here and look back and from where we are at the brewery here, be able to walk down, and we've got a couple of awesome breweries, 20, 30 yards away that we all get together and drink each other's beer and hang out, and it's really fun. It's fun to be able to say, okay, I love the beer we make, but it's fun to go drink somebody else's beer now and again, and to be able to drink it locally is great. And so,
Eric, we got a question in the chat really quickly.
Yep.
I've got 2 questions in the chat, and then I got to shout out some of our prize winners. The
yeah,
first
perfect.
One,
I told you I get to talking too much. So
you're totally
perfect
you're
jump
totally
in. Thank
good.
you.
I do feel like Oklahoma has been super antiquated on our alcohol laws, so I feel like we've dusted off some of the cobwebs and we're getting there. So I'm so glad to hear that there's that forward progression there. But 2 questions in the chat for you is, do you get your ingredients locally? And if not, where do they come from? And how does that kind of work within the beer business? And then where do you guys source your hops?
Yeah, so we try to get as much locally as we can. Unfortunately, a lot of the ingredients that we use don't. I mean, I will say the most important ingredient and the ingredient that makes up the most of beer is water, and we use good old City of Tulsa water that we filter a little bit. So there you go.
Yeah.
All of our malt actually comes from Germany. For the most part, we have used some. There's a couple of people here in Oklahoma that are making or that are malting some grains and then doing some wheat, and so we've made different beers with some of those. But primarily, our malt all comes. We get it by the container load from Germany, one of the oldest malting companies in the world. And then hops, we get kind of from all over the place. Most of it comes from the Pacific Northwest. So a lot of the major, U.S. hops come from, the Yakima, the Willamette Valley, up in that area. But we do get some from Germany, from Czech Republic, from Australia, New Zealand. So kind of all over the place. We have used some. We've got a friend who's got a little hop farm that we've used some of their hops in some small batch stuff. just for fun. And then yeast, our final ingredient, we get from a lab up in Colorado that was started by a guy that was originally from Oklahoma. So it's kind of a good thing there. So.
I love that Oklahoma connection. So I'm going to take a quick refill break and want to go through our winners, and then I do have another question for you after this. So everybody take a pause, go get some fresh beers. I know there's 2 left in the sample pack if you purchase that from Marshall's. And so I wanted to announce our prize winners from this week's social media bingo challenge. So thank you to everybody who shared their favorite TU memories on social media. It's fun to see that. And I know even though I didn't graduate that long ago, I love going back and seeing that. So our first winner is going to receive entry for a full team up to 12 tickets, 12 drinkers, choose them wisely, for the in-person, that is in all caps on my agenda. And I want to scream that at you guys, Cane Crawl for 2022. And that winner, drum roll please, is Stephanie Madsen, class of 2006. Congratulations to you. The alumni office, for all of our winners, for all of our 3 winners, will reach out to you guys to get your information and set you up to make sure that you guys can redeem that. So congrats, Stephanie. I will volunteer to be on your team if you have some extra slots there. The second winner tonight is going to receive a TU Uncorked party box for our virtual celebration on June 10th, which is crazy to me that that's just right around the corner. So that's going to come with a bottle of wine, all the party supplies to celebrate safely at your house. And the winner is Adrian Tuck, class of 2004 out of Denver, Colorado. Congratulations. I think that event is going to be super, super cool. And the last winner, the grand prize winner, is going to receive an awesome Marshall Brewing gift basket complete with beers, snacks, and all of our amazing Cane Crawl goodies. And I do want to do a drum roll for that one on my computer. That winner is Doug Wright, class of 1991, and he is such a long time TU Cane Crawl sponsor. So congratulations, Doug. Congratulations. Thank you for all that you've done for Cane Crawl over the years. And I should mention as well, so TU men's soccer is playing UCF in the conference championship right now. And so if there's a score change or anything like that, we will definitely update you guys on that. But if you can stream it as well while you're doing this, it's on ESPN Plus. So I hope that they win. And I just want to thank again our sponsors, Jim and Judy Miller and their friends, Law Office of Bryce Ace Hill, our Goldie sponsors, our Hurricane sponsors, and the Hut sponsors. Thank you guys for all that you do in making it TU education possible for everybody who wants it. So thank you so much. So Eric and Wes, I'm gonna kick it back over to you guys for the final 2 beers, and then I did have a question. It came in on my phone. Eric, what's your favorite Main Street organization in Oklahoma?
Loaded question.
I saw that. That is a loaded question. I wonder who that's from, but I would say Kendall Whittier Main Street. So
here we go. Yeah, K-Dub.
So we're obviously longtime members of Kendall Whittier. That's our neighborhood here. I've been involved on the board for a while. I'm actually the board president right now. Followed some great leadership like Amy Freeberger. We've been able to recruit some other folks. We got Calvin Muniz on recently, and he's doing a great job. Excited to have him. But we actually last year won the Main Street of the Year organization nationally, and so
which is
Kendall Whittier's really doing some great things.
Yeah.
Our executive director for a long time, our immediate past executive director was also a TU alum, Ed Shar, and he laid some amazing groundwork for the organization and was able to build and do some great things. And now Jessica Jackson, who's our director now, has just carried that torch and doing a lot of cool things. So it's been really neat to see this neighborhood grow and start to do some really cool things and be recognized nationally. So thanks for the loaded question, the plug there. That was awesome. So
I think you might have known who that came from. So
right.
That's awesome. So let's talk about the final two beers in the King Crawl pack because they are interesting. I haven't opened this one yet, but I'm waiting. I'm waiting.
Yeah. So I will try not to. I'll try not to get going too much and talk too much. I know that not everybody wants to sit here and listen to me talk all the time. I'll go ahead and talk about the Smash Pills real quick. This is one of my favorites, one of my babies. People always tend to ask you, "Oh, what's your favorite beer?" And the response is, it's like asking who your favorite kid is. I have two kids, so I can't say that. I love them both equally.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the way it is in the brewery. I mean, we wouldn't make a beer if we didn't like it, if we didn't think it was a good quality product. That's how we've always done. But I will say, if you sat there and watched me, and what I sort of gravitated towards most often, it would be our traditional German style beers. Our This Land Lager, which is Wes mentioned heritage brands, is definitely one of our main heritage brands right now. It's a traditional German Helles or lager. Our Dunkel, which is a dark lager. We've been making a beer called Volkspils for a long time, probably since about 3 or 4 months into making everything, which is a very traditional German Pils. Pils typically is your lighter lager, but has a little bit more hop character to it. And so the Smash here is one of our sort of tap room exclusive beers or whatever. But Smash is a rotating series. So Smash basically stands for single malt and single hop. So it's basically beer at a very pure, simple form. So it's one hop, which is a Pilsner malt, or excuse me, one malt, which is just your Pilsner light, easy drinking malt, and then one hop that rotates every time we brew it. And so this particular one, I think, that came in most people's is our latest one, which is with a hop called Sabro. Sabro is kind of it's the first Smash that we've done with a U.S. hop variety, but Sabro is a relatively new hop, and I love it because it's very unique. It gives a very unique sort of citrus character, but also has a pretty heavy, in certain scenarios, has a very heavy coconut characteristic to it. But it also, to me, it has a very unique kind of cedar woody undertone. So there's a whole lot of interesting stuff going on with that hop. So you'll find this typically in a lot of IPAs. It's in a lot of these new hazy or modern IPAs, but we thought it would be fun to use it in a Pilsner, and I think it turned out really well. So I've been drinking this one quite a bit. So hopefully people are enjoying that. Again, beers that I like to suggest to some of those folks not here. A lot of you who I said had Victory in your neighborhood. If you found Prima Pils on your list and you were able to find that out in your market, that is probably hands down one of my favorite beers ever. I may be a little biased having worked there, but also drank a lot of that beer and really miss being able to have that one quite a bit. So
Eric, I've got a question
Yep.
for you. So you had mentioned where you source kind of your ingredients and hops, keeping it local versus not. Obviously you source from a lot of different places. So how are you able to keep the taste and texture the same across the board for all your products?
Yeah, so I mean, I think you'll see, the great thing about craft beer and the great thing about the way that the industry is now is there's a lot of variety, there's a lot of innovation, there's a lot of new things going on all the time. We definitely tend to focus more on traditional styles and traditional things. That doesn't mean that we don't occasionally do some fun things or some of the more modern takes on things. Smash, again, this is one that we've been able to take a traditional style and maybe modernize it to some regard, but a lot of that just has to do in the process. We always like to tell people, home brewers will ask you, "Oh, can I have the recipe for that?" or whatever. I always tell people, we'll give you the recipe, not the brand, because, I think Adam from Burnco will tell you the same thing. I'll tell you exactly how I make ribs, but you're not going to do it the way that I do it. So it's going to be a little bit different. And so, first off, it's obviously making sure the ingredients are quality. And two, just the gentle care that you take and attention to detail in the process. And so I can't say enough great thing about the brewers and the guys that work around here. They really do love what they do at the end of the day. Brewing is very much a labor of love. You don't make a lot of money being a brewer, but again, at the end of the day, you're making beer, and that's a lot cooler than a lot of the other things. But these people really do love and care and are proud of what they do. And when people take pride and ownership in the product, it really comes through in the final beer. And I think you'll see that all the way down. Obviously, you can hear Wes and I talk all day about this stuff, but you talk to the people who are here cleaning kegs and packing off and doing everything. They love what they do, and they love the beer that they make, and I couldn't be more proud of those guys and what it comes through in our final product for sure. So
yeah, you guys have an awesome product. As somebody that has alternated between both of these kind of all night.
Good,
so
good
we
for
love what you
you.
do. Yeah, we love what you do.
So I guess the final beer, we can go ahead and talk about that, and Wes, you can jump in whenever. But the Uss Tulsa, this is one I'd like to tell this story. I like this beer. It's it kind of ended up being a little bit of a carryover when before we could actually operate the tap room and sell our regular beers. There was a loophole found to where we could make 3-2 beer, low point beer, and operate a little bit. And so we started playing with different beer styles in different ways. The problem when you're making low point beer is trying to make a beer that has body and flavor to it and not super like low and thin tasting. And so we'd kind of come up with this idea, or had kind of had this wild idea, only to figure out that people were already doing this out in Portland and some of those other places. But adding oatmeal to adding flaked oats or gelatinized oats to a beer really helps to kind of give like a creamy texture. So this is an oatmeal IPA, and a lot of people are like, ooh, what does the oatmeal taste like in that? Oatmeal, you really don't get a lot of flavor from it. It does kind of add that creamy texture and gives a little bit more body in the product. And so this is kind of a lot of the hazy IPAs that you see out in the market now, which are hugely popular, have a very high content of flaked oats, flaked wheat, these other sort of flaked grains that give that body and that character to it. And so this while this is not 3.2, it's in the 6% range. It does carry over with that oatmeal to give that kind of sort of creamy texture. And then it's got some more of the modern sort of tropical fruity kind of hops. It's not overly bitter like a lot of your traditional IPAs. It's more aromatic and has that sort of fruit tinge. The Tulsa.
I agree.
What about the fiber content? So you mentioned
the
oats.
Fiber content. Yeah,
It have high fiber content.
So it's healthy
yes.
with the fiber.
Right. Federal government won't let us tell you how healthy beer is to drink responsibly in moderation. Remember, that's a key to the word tonight: responsible drinking.
I just want to highlight one thing that Eric mentioned, which is kind of the modern hops. And when we started in 2008. One of the prevailing styles of IPA from the West Coast was a West Coast IPA, something that's very piney, very citrusy, something that didn't have a mass appeal to everyone. Once you became accustomed to it, as we all did, you probably fell in love with it. But others who were not as in tune with the idea of drinking something with significant bitterness would talk about, having to shave their tongue afterwards, or feeling like they brushed their teeth with a pine cone. And one of the more interesting things that's happened is that IPAs have continued to morph. Yes, they're still India Pale Ales, but the hops and the techniques to brew the beers and to create flavor profiles in the beer have changed significantly. And a lot of the hops primarily that are in this beer, but that are in a whole new series of IPAs, are not incredibly bitter. They're not echoing that idea of brushing your teeth with a pine cone. They have a lot more soft, citrus, tropical fruit type flavors. So if you were 5 or 6 years ago, tried a West Coast IPA and got that bitter beer face thing going on, and you're like, I just can't do IPAs. I tried it. It's not my style.
I think that's me because of that. Actually, I really do.
A lot of folks, really, because our bodies are really designed and attuned to think of bitterness as poison, right? That's like, stay away.
Yeah.
And so unless you teach yourself to enjoy that flavor, it doesn't happen for a lot of folks. And if you have that bad experience, obviously up front, you have an issue with that as well. But, so for those who have not tried one of these newfangled IPAs with the modern hops that are less focused on bitterness and more focused on aroma and flavor, I suggest that this is something to check out and maybe see if there aren't new styles that might be more enjoyable.
Yeah, the hazy IPAs, the juicy IPAs, those definitely tend to be less bitter and more, fruit or aromatic forward on that front. And so I'll quickly jump into the name behind the beer, Tulsa 16. This beer actually, before it went into a can, was called USS Tulsa. So it's named after the USS Tulsa littoral class combat ship that was built or commissioned a couple of years ago. So Tulsa, the USS Tulsa always has a ship sponsor, or excuse me, all the ships generally have a ship sponsor, female. That's just traditionally how it's been done. And so our former Tulsa Mayor, Kathy Taylor, was honored, basically honored to be asked to be the ship sponsor. And
that's awesome.
They help, support the crew and just be sort of that, I don't 100% know what all goes in and out the sponsorships, but it's a big honor. And I got to know Kathy early on when we started. She actually came and did a proclamation for the brewery as Marshall Brewing Day and cut the ribbon and so on. But she's just been a great supporter ever since we started, and has just always been a super nice ally and cheerleader and so on. Well, when she got involved in this, she asked if we'd be interested in doing a beer to just kind of highlight that A, there was a ship being built as USS Tulsa, but B, just kind of do something fun and something unique. And so we were like, yeah, hey, this is awesome. We're definitely on board. Well, through this whole deal, I got to go to the christening of the ship down in Mobile. And then
awesome.
the commissioning of the ship in San Francisco a couple of years ago.
Wow.
We had the honor to be able to host the crew that came through, a delegation from the original crew that came through Tulsa a few years ago for a barbecue and beers, and just awesome people. I've gotten to know some people that I'm still somewhat connected with via Facebook, but just a really cool opportunity to highlight the brave men and women, obviously, that fight for our freedom, but also, that fight on that ship under our name and represent us, and just a really cool opportunity. And so the reason this beer isn't called USS Tulsa on the can is because the federal government will not let us use the USS part.
Copyrighted?
The Tulsa 16 is in reference to the littoral class ship that was built, that the USS Tulsa is. There's the Freedom class and the Independence class, and so all of the even numbered ones are the Freedom class. I can't remember which one, but anyways, USS Tulsa was the 16th ship that was built in that class, and
that's
so
awesome.
So that's where the Tulsa 16 came from. So a fun little beer, kind of a cool story, and a really easy drinking, sort of tasty IPA that again is kind of one of our tap room beers.
And I know we're short for time, but I just wanted to add, from a marketing perspective, I thought, the traditional commissioning of a U.S. naval ship is a bottle of champagne being broke across the bow of the ship. And so I thought, how great would that be if we could have a big giant, bottle of USS Tulsa to do that with. And so we kind of walked some of that idea up to the executive officers in the Navy, who said something like, how would you like to be the first non-champagne commissioned ship? And everybody, of course, said, well, no. And we backed away from that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Who wants that on your record?
Right.
Thing?
Right. Like Wes said, I know we're short on time, but I did just see a question. This may be a great way to kind of tail us out. But we had a question asked about, hey, we've been through a rough spot recently, and how can you help support? First off, I appreciate everybody who has sent us some love and supported us through this whole deal. For those of you who maybe live out of state that don't know, back in February 16th, back in Tulsa, when we had a nice string of like 2-degree days.
Round two.
Right, the neighbor next door to our tap room building, which our brewery and our tap room are kind of on the same block, but they're separate buildings. We have the building just to the west of us. We actually share a common wall. The guy was trying to thaw his pipes with a heat gun and a space heater and caught his building on fire. And 6 or 7 hours, 60 plus firefighters later, frozen with icicles, they finally got it put out. Fortunately, our building did not catch on fire. However, we did take quite a bit of smoke damage, and they had to bust through the wall behind our bar in order to fight the fire from that side. And so, I mean, we're completely shut down over there until we can get everything remediated with smoke. Unfortunately, that process has taken forever. We're finally kind of rolling. I still don't know when we'll be open. We're very fortunate, A, that nobody got hurt, B, that our building didn't catch fire, but also for the firefighters. If anybody's seen any of the interviews that we've had to do on this whole deal, I will say, you know, despite the anxiety of potentially watching your building and your business burn to the ground, literally, to see the brave men and women who fight fires and put their lives on the line to protect us and keep us safe is to watch them in action is totally unbelievable. And so we're so fortunate and so thankful for you know, firefighters all over the world and first responders. But they definitely saved our building and saved the business from that side of things. However, we are down, we are repairing, we're going through all the smoke remediation and everything now. Part of the holdup has been that the gentleman whose building burnt has to tear his building down, and since we share a common wall, there's potential structural issues, and so we're working through that process right now. But it's in motion. Hopefully, it will happen. It will come down. So the ask was, how do you continue to, or how do you support? We are still operating a tap room, so a temporary tap room, I guess. We've tried for a while to operate out of the beer garden on nice days, but yay, Oklahoma weather. That was very inconsistent and infrequent. So we've kind of relocated back in the old tap room, which was a room in the brewery. That those walls have since been torn down, or production space. So now you can come have a beer with us in the brewery. Very authentic, very rustic, I guess you would say. Or, you know, if you get real on it, you can come sit on a keg chair and have a beer. That's kind of what we're working with right now. But we are still operating now 7 days a week, just different hours. You can look at our social media for that. We also offer to-go beer, and then beer obviously sold in grocery and convenience and liquor stores. We really, you know, we being the recipient of the love and the you know, all the good word and everything from people through this was just you know, brought me to tears a couple of times. Just how generous people were, and how when you feel the love like that in a situation, it's pretty incredible. And so thanks to all you people out there that are on this, that I know that reached out, and thanks to everybody else who's been supporting us in whatever way you can. So we certainly appreciate it. And thanks for joining us tonight. I'll answer any more questions, but I'm sitting here looking, whoa, it's 7 o'clock. So I talk too much. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you're totally good. I was going to say, if you guys have unanswered questions, please email the alumni team, and that is TU Alumni at utulsa.edu. Again, that's TU Alumni at utulsa.edu, and we will get you guys an answer to your questions. And then I was going to say, it's halftime too for our men's soccer team, and unfortunately UCF is up 1-0, but I know there's 45 minutes left for that half, so hopefully we can get some scores in for that. But my final message is, thank you guys so much for for joining us. Thank you, Eric and Wes. I've loved our conversation. I hope everybody else has too. I feel like I've gotten a really good glimpse behind the veil and what you guys do and the products you put out. And thank you for your involvement in the community and just persisting through all the setbacks that this year has shown us. I know it hasn't been easy, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing for us and putting out fantastic products to expand our palates and just make beer drinking more lively. 3-2 is not great. Let's do something different. And thank you guys so much for that. And again, thank you for each and every single one of you guys who has helped sponsor this event and taken part and sign up. You really are funding student success, and that ultimately is what we want to do. We want to use a platform to launch people into a more successful life. And so thank you for all of those. But that's it for us. 7 minutes over, but thank you for joining, and I hope you guys have an awesome night.
Yes.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you, guys.
Cheers.
Go TU, Rain Cane, whatever they say these days.
All the above. We'll
they
check
do
all
that
the above.
fancy
Yeah.
they do that fancy
So
sign on
trendy now.
the
Yeah.
grams now, right? So
I know.
awesome. Cheers.